Thank you for joining us. For over 31 years, the Shalom Show generally focuses on the achievements of the State of Israel and Jewish life in general. And as the show's name indicates, we'd like to see mutually inspiring solutions and peace. However, world events and current politics necessitate conversations on issues such as the war on terrorism, and issues such as whether Israel should or should not give up more land for peace. We impartially present interviews with leaders from both the left and the right, and our special guest today is Mr. Sid Dinerstein, chairman of the Palm Beach County Republican Party, who will share his views on these and other issues following these messages.
Welcome to the Life Extension Foundation, providing innovative answers to your healthcare questions. Can't find healthcare information that allows you to take control of your life? Then visit the Life Extension Foundation online for real answers to your questions. For free information about breakthrough therapies your doctor may not know about, access the Foundation's website at www.lef.org.
Call us today for your free, no-obligation information packet.
With us now is Sid Dinerstein, chairman of the Republican Party of Palm Beach County, Florida. It's a pleasure and privilege to have you on the show, sir.
Same here.
It's interesting. We're here in South Florida, and Florida is regarded often as a swing state. How important is your county in the big picture?
Well, as the world found out in 2000, we are of utmost importance. Florida is sort of a southern state and a Republican state, except that Southeast Florida has a lot of, for the most part, transplants from the Northeast. And the three counties, Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach, make up almost 40% of the state's population, and tend to, historically, have voted for Democrats. For the Democrats to win our state, they must do very, very well in Broward and Palm Beach. Not so much anymore in Dade, because Dade has become a very Cuban community, which means a Republican community. So while the Democrats tend to win the county in Dade, they win by a narrow amount. But in Broward and Palm Beach, they win by large amounts. Both Broward and Palm Beach have significant Jewish populations, which, as everybody knows, are reliably Democratic. Our ability to break through that has a dramatic effect on our ability to carry the state and for the Republicans to win presidential elections. So we've done it before. We're planning on doing that again.
This is very interesting, and historically, as you say, the Jewish voters tend to be more Democratic than Republican. Why is that, actually?
Well, you know, I'm going to give you the long answer, but first let's go to what's historical. What's historical is Israel is in an existential moment. For the first time since the modern state of Israel has existed, Israel is dealing with an anti-Israeli American president. So while that gives us an opportunity to get more Jewish votes on the Republican side, it also raises the stakes. In other words, if we're not successful, and if President Obama is reelected, Israel could have problems that are unimaginable today, as President Obama uses all the influence and the might of America to force the 67 borders on Israel. So the stakes are very, very high, even though we're optimistic about how well we're going to do.
Sir, sorry for interrupting you. Speaking of optimism, many people ask if Israel's neighbors refused to recognize and make peace with Israel before 1967, when in fact they had the pre-1967 borders, why should they now accept Israel and make peace if Israel goes back to the 1967 armistice lines?
Well, of course, the 1967 discussion, we can give the President of the United States the benefit of the doubt that he simply doesn't know better, being kind of new to international politics. But the Israelis and all their neighbors understand exactly what's going on. This is not about a negotiation for land. This is about a negotiation over Israel's existence. And certainly Netanyahu understands that clearly, as do the overwhelming majority of people in Israel. Now, we get back to your prior question. Well, what about the Jews in America? And here's where it becomes very, very troubling. In the last election, President Obama got 78% of the Jewish vote. Now, by recent history, that was a not unexpected number. However, by the time the election came, we all knew President Obama's friends. We have all met Reverend Wright and William Ayers and others who were known not to be friends of Israel, and yet he got 78% of the vote. So now you fast forward to where the president doesn't even have to pretend to like Israel, has visited virtually every one of Israel's neighbors, but has never visited Israel, and pretty much goes out of his way to make it clear to the world that he's on the side of the Palestinians. So how do Jews in America vote again for President Obama? And while it's taken me many years, the answer is a clear one. They are Democrats, these Jews in America. And you might think that doesn't explain much, but it explains everything. They are Democrats. Whatever else they are Democrats. When people finally understand that, it makes sense. By being a Democrat, you do not have to engage in any discussion. You do not have to bring your intellect. You do not have to do anything. You're a Democrat. Now, what you do have to do is make up pretenses to pretend that you weighed both sides and found the Democratic side preferable. But that's just so you don't look like a fool to your friends. But in fact, they're Democrats.
You're suggesting that Democrats are just blindly following party lines regardless of what the issues are?
On their most thoughtful days. Yes, it could be worse, but that's exactly what they do. In 2004, the first presidential election where I was chairman of the county, President Bush by then was the best friend Israel ever had. So when I would go to Democrats who were Jews, I'd say, well, isn't it time you considered voting for President Bush? And they'd say, well, you know, we're really happy he's such a good friend of Israel, but too many members of the Christian right are in your party, so I can't vote for you. Now, that was their way of saying they actually thought about something, and they're Democrats. But they didn't. They thought about nothing, but they needed an excuse, so they all had the same one. In the last election, 2008, now you had Barack Obama, friend of Reverend Wright, friend of Jesse Jackson, friend of Louis Farrakhan, running for president against John McCain, clear friend of Israel. And you would say, well, by now you should be voting for a Republican. They said, well, you know, we would, but Sarah Palin, we just can't vote for Sarah Palin. I said, oh, you mean Sarah Palin, the one who has the flag of Israel on her desk in Alaska? That's Sarah Palin. Yes, that's Sarah Palin. We can't possibly let Sarah Palin be vice president of the United States. So we have to vote for Obama.
But this doesn't make sense, Sid. The conservative Christians in this country support Israel so warmly.
This is, you're missing my main point. They are Democrats. If you go further than that, then you lose the whole essence of why things happen. So now here we are going to 2012. And the question is, what is the excuse this time? So I've gone to some of my Jewish Democratic friends and said, well, now that we all know how the President of the United States feels about Israel and feels about Palestine and feels, say, about Assad in Syria, who hasn't even raised a wagging finger or something, are you going to vote for a Republican? And they all say the same thing. They say, it depends on who you put up, which means it does not depend on who you put up. I'm a Democrat, you see. Because then whoever we put up will have not met the test. Because my answer when they say it depends on who you put up is, well, we know who you're putting up. You're putting up the anti-Israeli guy. Why wouldn't you vote for a Republican if we were putting up Mickey Mouse over a guy like that? Oh, it depends on who you put up. So that's their way of saying they're voting for President Obama. Now, having said that, they will not get 78% again. And in fact, trying to be realistic, I see them somewhere around 60. And while 60 is still a horrific number for a president who might turn the other way if your homeland was being destroyed, it's not enough for him to win Florida and maybe some other places around the country, like Ohio and New Jersey. So we will work to get our 40%. And that's kind of how the election's shaping up with respect to the Jewish community.
Of the number of Republican candidates in the field right now, some Republicans are saying that any one of them would be a better choice with regard to Israel and its future than the current administration. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think even honest Democrats would say that. If your criteria is Israel, then it doesn't matter who the Republicans put up. That's number one. The good news is, as the world is going to find out at the next election, if your criteria is the economy, it doesn't matter who we put up. So we're going to win the next election, but not because of Israel, which should be reason enough to win, but because of the economy, which is pretty awful and getting worse. And he doesn't get to run against Bush. He can run against Bush for the first 4 years, saying Bush left a mess, but he can't then go to the voters and say, give me 4 more years because Bush left a mess. He has to say, give me 4 more years because of the progress I've made, and the voters are going to say, you haven't made enough progress. Or what they're really going to say is what Peggy Noonan says, you made it worse. And in fact, he made it worse.
Sir, I'd like us to continue, but we must pause for these commercial messages. We'll be right back.